Thaddeus McCotter, welcome back to Bulldog Live. How are you today?
Oh, hey, Bulldog. Thanks for having me back to help scratch the surface of things.
Well, we got a lot of scratching to do, let me tell you. I don't use the shovel analogy because, that implies something else.
Yeah, you want to be a housebroken Bulldog.
That's right. But I tell you, I still, now that you opened that door, Gary Johnson's line in that debate last week, though, wasn't that a gem?
Yeah, and I was very happy to see Gary get in there. We had been at, the New Hampshire Young Republicans picnic, straw poll. And when you're considered second, third-tier candidates, it's nice to see one of you be able to get up on the big stage.
Right. Well, I've bemoaned the fact that you, as well as Gary Johnson, Buddy Roemer, Andy Martin, and others who have been excluded from the debates because they're the so-called lesser tier, and some of the criteria have even been called into question. The poll numbers were there for some of these candidates, but yet they still weren't invited in. But anyway, those are, we can't change that, can we?
No, it's all water under the Mackinac Bridge.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you, however, you may be out of the presidential field, but you are still very active in Congress in trying to propose solutions, and I think that's what America really does look for in the politicians, and we'll find out more in the many months ahead as the New Hampshire primary starts to take shape. But you have done something particularly regarding Social Security where the others are busy name-calling and reading each other's books.
Well, yeah, I introduced a bill last Monday, and it was about trying to solve the Social Security problem if you're taking into account the things that people have said they don't want to see done, such as raising the retirement age or the payroll tax, cutting benefits, or privatizing it. So when you start from that premise, you try to see if it can be accomplished. I was lucky enough, Bulldog, to work with a guy named Peter Ferrara, an expert on entitlement reform. And we came up with a proposal we believe can get support not only from Republicans, but from Democrats as well when they look at the alternatives that are out there. In short, what it does is within Social Security itself, you take savings from reducing government programs elsewhere, which we all know has to be done, and you use that by allowing people to receive their benefits up front if they're 50 or younger in a personalized investment account within the system. Now, the reason this would work is because it allows market forces at the individual's option to start building for their retirement as well, not simply relying upon taxpayers. And it's, according to the chief actuary of Social Security, who's tasked with the responsibility of overseeing the fund, he believes that 100% of people would want to participate in this, and that it would reduce the outstanding debt of the system by $8.5 trillion.
Huh. Well, how about that? But, of course, that's a politically charged solution because you do have the vested interests who I think like to keep people poor, myself. And that's, I'm afraid, one of the side effects of Social Security.
Well, I think the problem that we'll run into is that the government obviously likes to use Social Security for other purposes. And we've heard talk about treating the entire system as a lockbox that can't be moved. But what we're talking about with the personal investment accounts is you would have individualized lockboxes accruing benefits over time, building them up. And what you would also see is a match of an entitlement program with what's going on in people's lives around them, as we've talked about before, the move towards liberty and self-government expanding. And so by doing this, you would be injecting those types of 21st century movements into Social Security to preserve what is an essential part of our safety net.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes. And, in fact, I did have a caller to this show some time ago because you mentioned entitlement reform, and that's what we commonly refer to Social Security, Medicare, and the like as entitlements. And she says, wait a minute, I've paid into that all my life. What do you mean it's an entitlement? She says, that's my money.
That's a term that we can thank Lyndon Johnson and others for. But the reality is that it, according to the Supreme Court, is a redistribution system like any other, and when you pay in, it goes out every month. And I would argue that the personal investment accounts that I'm talking about within the system would wind up actually being much closer to what your caller talked about than the way the current system operates.
Well, yeah, and I would agree with you. In fact, I know that this is not a brand new idea. This has been proposed in the past. I mean, Ronald Reagan even addressed this type of issue back in 1964 in his Time for Choosing speech, when he was giving a speech in the days before that election for Barry Goldwater. Because if people are allowed to invest their money, and we know that when you get into the stock market, I know a lot of people like to point at the stock market, well, that money can all disappear. When you go into the stock market, you're in there for a long term. You're not in there for a short term. Any financial advisor can tell you that, and that you probably will get a bigger rate of return in the long run.
Right, and this is not privatization, which is something that people have said they don't want, this which diverts the payroll tax and which puts the risk of these accounts not only on the people outside the system, but the people currently receiving their benefits, including people with disabilities. What it does by leaving it within the system, within defined options that they can have for investment, what you're going to wind up seeing is, as you rightly put it, the market over time going up, instead of putting it in the worst possible place of return, which is allowing the bureaucrats to continue to take it or the politicians to take it and spend it elsewhere. It leaves it in the system, and it leaves it within a personalized lockbox for you.
Yeah. Well, no. And I hope that the government would be able to keep that promise, though. Not too many people are trusting Congress right about now. That's for sure.
Well, you would have a lot of built-in support, both in terms of people being able to see their accounts and to have public support for opposing the continued raiding of Social Security. But more importantly, equally importantly, you would also have a generation that thinks they're never going to see Social Security now being able to see and participate in the system to continue support for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do we do for those that are over age 50?
They can continue in the system as it is. You had to draw a line where individuals could make that determination. But it would also, as I point out, prevent raising the retirement age on those individuals 50 and older, so they'd have to wait even longer or a benefit cut. Mm-hmm. The reason that I think that we can get support for this, and it won't happen overnight. It's going to take time, like any major reform. But the reason that I think that you'll see support for it is if you don't want to take this direction, you're left with four things that people have said they don't want, which is, again, raising the retirement age, raising the payroll tax, cutting benefits, or privatizing the system.
Yeah. Now, under this plan, for those that would participate in these, more private accounts, to invest the money, as you said, what did you say? Defined contributions, or what was that again?
Yeah, there'll be gradations between more aggressive and less aggressive.
Oh, okay.
But the key is, well, look, they don't have to do it. You can stay in the system as it is and continue on.
That's what I wanted to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, you're still in the system either way, but you do not have to go with a personalized investment account. You can continue on as it is. But according to the chief actuary of Social Security, because your return is guaranteed, regardless if you go into one of these accounts, he believes there'll be 100% participation in them. I want to stress that. Yeah, it's optional. It's all within the system. But because of the guarantee that if you go into a personal investment account under the system, even if it doesn't work, you're still guaranteed what you get.
Really? Now, how does that work, besides government having to do another bailout?
Well, it's not a bailout. You're currently projected to get a certain amount.
Uh-huh.
That's not a bailout. All you're doing is guaranteeing that amount and arguing that if you allow the investment in the free market to actually build up your retirements rather than solely relying on taxpayers, what it does is it reduces the burden of that debt on the government. You're deleveraging debt.
Sure.
And that's why it works.
Okay. And looking at this, so we give everybody, the money that they've paid into Social Security, and we give them that money back to go ahead and start these funds. How, and I know you've probably had to look at this because, by all figures that I've seen, Social Security is broke right now. There is no money except for a bunch of IOUs. Where does that money come from?
Well, it comes from not going further in debt. We all know that government has to be reduced. And we'll be introducing a companion bill of potential places where you can cut government and actually use some of the savings to allow people to draw down on their future benefits to put in these accounts. So it would come from reductions in big government to help leverage the reduction in debt in the Social Security. That's why it's a win-win for taxpayers.
Okay, I gotcha. So you introduced this last week, and what has been the reaction so far from either the House chamber or the Senate?
Oh, well, we're on recess right now, so I'm going to go back. I've already started the process of giving it to Ways and Means Chairman Dave Camp, sending out dear colleagues to our letters, to letters to our colleagues in the House, and again, just going to continue to talk about it, continue to build up public support, continue to build up congressional support. And as you know, again, it's a major reform, but I think that's what we're seeing from the public now is they used to call Social Security or entitlement reform the third rail of politics if you tried to deal with it. I think it's far more likely that the public views politicians who won't address such issues as having touched the third rail and no longer being necessary.
Well, judging by the last few presidential candidates' debates that have been held, everybody's been talking about what to do with Social Security, and I think it's very important to point out because unlike the days of, say, 10 or 20 years ago when the liberals used to point at Republicans saying, you'd rather just throw grandma out in the street and make Social Security disappear. Nobody's talking about that today, not even Ron Paul.
No, the worst thing that can happen is to do nothing, and that's when people are going to find out that the social safety nets has frayed to the point where Social Security is in trouble. They know that the system has to change. And that's the premise that we started with. That, and in addition, Bulldog, was the four things I talked about, the people who said they really don't want to see happen. Is there a way to save them without doing that? I believe this proposal does it. And if you want to read more about it, it's H.R. 2889, and it's at my website, McCotter.house.gov.
Okay, McCotter.house.gov, and it's House Resolution 2889, you said?
Yep.
Good. Well, we'll see. Is this the only proposal in Congress right now, or do you think others are coming?
I think others are coming, but they'll have one of the four things that I talked about in them, such as raising the retirement age or others. So I would not be surprised to see those, and I look forward to a healthy debate and getting the message out is that there's a better way to go.
Well, I certainly hope so, because right now the only thing that I'm seeing that takes the stage on the debates are, is it a Ponzi scheme? Is it not a Ponzi scheme? And look, that term's been thrown around for 30, 40 years now. So this is not a new term that's being used. Just amazing how when you read somebody's book, what you see.
Yeah, well, look, the left likes to get into the question of what do you call it. The reality is everybody knows that it needs to be fixed. Well, and that's what we really have to focus on.
Well, that's exactly it, because if the people are to have any trust in their government, and I think that's a whole fundamental issue as well, and, we're supposed to have the trust that the government's taking our money out of our checks and using it wisely, which the track record right now is very poor in that regard. Looking into something like this that, let's face it, Congressman, many people my age or younger, we all believe that Social Security will not be there for us.
Oh, you're right, Bulldog. Look, I'm Generation X. Started with my generation. It's continuing, and that's why part of what we're proposing is so important, is to get younger people involved in the system, to see the benefits of it, and to continue the support for it so that you do not have a generational confrontation between whether the Social Security should continue or not.
All right. Well, Congressman McCotter, I do appreciate you taking the time to join us. Now, the fact that you've not in the race anymore, who have you decided to throw your support behind?
I endorse Governor Romney. Coming from Michigan, obviously the ties bind, but most importantly, the number one issue is going to be the economy, and I think that the extensive background that Governor Romney has in the private sector makes the best juxtaposition with President Obama and his absence of experience in the private sector, especially at a time when people are very concerned about their jobs or trying to find them. They need to know that the economy is going to be the focus and that the Republican candidate has the best track record on that issue.
Now, since we've seen you in New Hampshire many times in the past, can we look forward to seeing you again here in the Granite State?
Well, I may be back. We've got some great Republicans there, and if Charlie or Frank wants me to come back, I will. If they don't, I won't. Whatever helps them,
So you're not a party crasher.
I'm a party guy, not a party crasher.
Very good. All right. Well, Congressman Thaddeus McCotter, thanks again. Always a pleasure chatting with you. I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thanks, Bulldog. Keep scratching, baby.
All right. Will do. Take care.